is the best piece of advice that you could give to somebody who is looking to buy a home or sell a home?
Invest in a realtor. I mean, yes, you can do it on your own, but honestly, I would invest in a realtor any day to help us along with the process.
Hi, everyone. It's your friend Ryan Rolfe with the dsmSOLD team at Keller Williams, Legacy Group here in Des Moines, Iowa. And this is the first episode of our podcast, the dsmSOLD team podcast, Your Real Estate Experience Matters. I'm your host and your friend Ryan Rolfe with the dsmSOLD team. And this podcast, the goal of this podcast, we're talking about stories of our previous clients, as well as vendors and partners that we work with, that they're willing to share with the public on what their experiences were with us, and also tips and tools and tricks, be they client facing or vendor facing, that they're willing to share with us about their experience or their products. The stories will talk about different journeys of clients and how they go through the process of looking for a home, buying a home, selling a home. And the experience are worth being shared with everyone, because the mission of the dsmSOLD team is that we want our clients to have a stellar experience and a 5-star red carpet experience working with us throughout the process. And we want it to be an inspiration for everyone out there. So in today's episode, we're talking about the real estate experience and lessons that Paul and AJ, some past clients of ours, learned in working through the process. We're going to talk about the ins and outs of their real estate experience and the home buying journey. And so be sure to listen all the way through for the details. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Paul Salias and AJ Purdue.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Good. How are you guys? Well, thank you so much for joining us for this. Really appreciate it. I'm really excited to talk with you and to talk more. It's been a little while. I know we've had some, you've had some referrals that we've thankfully been able to help out, and we appreciate you sending those our way. How have you been doing?
Good. Loving the home. We're in it today.
Yay.
So
Loving the home.
Yeah.
Yes, I've really enjoyed the last year and a half making it our own, turning it from a house into a home, adding little 4-legged children to the mix. So
which you may hear barking.
You may hear her in the background, so we apologize. Yeah.
Yay, dogs are the best. So before owning your home and getting started with this process, what were your expectations, I guess, of buying a home and the real estate journey before you really got into it?
I don't know about him, but I was worried about how cumbersome the process would be, knowing how busy we were day in and day out. And so I knew when we started the process or even started investigating, I knew that we wanted someone to help us along with that process. So I think more so trying to figure out what that process looked like and how we were going to navigate that.
Yeah, so we were first-time home buyers when we bought our home. And so kind of beforehand, we didn't really know where to start, right? We just reached out to some people that we knew, kind of asked some questions, and like we had no idea about how does pre-approval work? How does like looking for the actual home? How do you contact we know how to contact a bank, but like how do you make that something where you're like, okay, we officially want to go forward? And so I'll just, realistically, when we met with you that first time, Ryan, and you kind of went through a slideshow and told us about lots of different things, the process, step 1, step 2, hiring a realtor, different things with financing, etc. Like that package, when we got home that night, we talked about it. We then kind of had an understanding of, okay, this is what the road's going to look like.
Yay. Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing. So what would you say is something that you wish someone had told you before you started the process?
What do you think?
For me, that finding the right realtor is going to be important. So I know there's a lot of people that do it on their own, a lot of people that find realtors that I've heard that haven't maybe had the best experience. And so I think finding the right realtor to meet you where you're at the home buying process, whether you're a new homeowner, a seasoned homeowner, or even looking to sell. I think was important for us is
Yeah.
finding the right person that fits us and where we're at in the home buying process.
And so, I mean, for
Right.
us, also, it was right, everything was brand new. So we had several questions along the way. And so, to Paul's point, we were looking for someone who could like hold our hand and guide us through every step. Like, what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? And so, because we had no idea how any of that stuff worked, that was definitely something that was high on our priority list. And so we wanted, when we started to kind of meet with folks, and after we met with you and we had a couple of other potential people, we wanted to make sure that people were going to be like, before we ever started the process, that people could kind of teach us step by step what we needed to do and could guide us to make sure we got through closing.
Right. That is definitely, I'll tell you, that's probably one of my favorite parts about being in real estate and helping people through the process is just kind of being a lot of times now I use that, hey, I'm your real estate tour guide. I'm going to, I'm going to explain this to you, but I don't expect you to remember all of it. We're going to walk through the process together, because it is a big process. You, AJ, you're in the healthcare space, we've run into each other where you work a couple times and the ins and outs of that building and the company you're with and healthcare. And, you could guide me through something in that space, right? That I've never been through before. So that's how I take real estate. Most people have never bought a house before, sold a house, or maybe they've done it once or twice, maybe in a different state, but it just, each time is a little bit different. So regardless of where you're at, as Paul said, we want to be there to make sure that we're giving you that best experience that we can, and ultimately, so you can focus on your day to day, and we can alleviate as much stress as possible. So that is awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that. So now into more, I guess, working with us specific questions with the team, and specifically on looking at homes and kind of throughout the entire process. The first question on this is, how would you describe your experience working with us?
Nothing but great for us. I mean, honestly, it was everything we anticipated we needed out of a realtor and a team and someone to support us through that process. So for us, it was an exceptional experience, and we appreciate everything you all did for us. And it honestly made the home buying process a lot less daunting than we anticipated and very seamless. So it was great.
That was kind of the thing, just the entire process. I think, and Ryan, I've told you this a couple times, but we felt like we were your only client, right? Mm-hmm. So when we had questions, they were answered. You kept us on track with what we needed to do next, lining up listings for us, some that you found and sent us, some that we found and sent you. It was a good mix of both. And really just, we both talk about this and tell lots of our friends about this too. The process of buying a house was easy for us. And I use that term kind of lightly, but it was not difficult. You hear so often people that have nightmares or, things just don't work out well. Mm-hmm. We didn't have that. And we know that we didn't have that because we were working with such a great team. I still look back at the entire process and think like, getting a home for us was much easier than a lot of people make it seem. And we know that was because of you and your team. Everybody made it so wonderful. You had partners who showed us houses when you were out of town and you had other obligations, people working in the office that were following up with us. Like everything just went really smoothly. And we both operate on, we're pretty like, okay, this is what we need next. This is what we need next. This is what we need next. And we never really had an issue at all with anything being a surprise.
Good. Yay. Well, thank you again for sharing that. And just every time I hear that, and that we've talked about this before, just to get your initial feedback. And I live for hearing your experience at the end of the day, because I really want to know, what stood out to you, and then of course always what we can do better. So that question's coming up.
Yeah.
The second question is what was the best part? And I think you've answered this a little bit, but what was the best part about having us alongside you in the journey?
Well, I think without saying it yet, I mean, you all were the subject matter experts, and we really did gift that to you all. So, we really relied heavily on you to be those subject matter experts to help us along that process. And honestly, we were just so thankful that we could take a step back and really provide the information, the documentation, whatever it may be along that journey. Easily without having to worry about the nuances of real estate that you all helped us through. So that was nice.
Yes. And really just the entire process, we felt very non-pressured. So, when we would look at a house, we didn't feel like, we never once felt like you were trying to sell us a house to sell us a house. And we didn't feel like your team was trying to just like throw things at us to get it done. We actually felt like, oh yeah, no, they really care about us finding the house that we want, not just a house. And so that was just one of the greatest things that we had with the whole team along kind of the entire process.
Yay. Well, and you're spending a lot of money, right?
Right.
A house is a big purchase. So we want to make sure that first and foremost, it's a good investment. And part of that is making sure that you like it. Like, you're just not going to, maybe in this market, it's crazy. And you guys kind of bought when it was crazy too. Maybe in this market, you settle a little bit more, but still we don't want you to buy a house. I never want anyone to buy a house that they're going to call me, a month, a year, 3 years later. And they're like, we're so unhappy here, right? You might learn things from this purchase that you'll take into your next, when you buy a new house, potentially down the road. But definitely want you to be happy and want you to feel like this is the one. You need that awe factor when you go in and look at it, right?
I do think that's a testament to you and your team, though, because you could very easily, as a realtor, put only the houses you have up for sale right in front of us, but you didn't do that. You actually presented options that, we had shared with you, aesthetics that we were looking for and what we were looking for in a home, what made home feel like home to us. And so I think that's a testament to your team to really look at the scope of houses in the market and present the options that were going to be meaningful for us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Now, the last question kind of about your experience in working with us is, what do you feel like we could have done better to prepare you? Or what's maybe one thing that you would have wanted us to do differently?
I think one of the things that we talked about, and this wasn't even necessarily during the process itself as much as maybe during closing, et cetera, you've been wonderful about if we reach out with giving some recommendations, contractors, things like that. But I think for us, it would have been very helpful, even if there was like a one sheet or just a takeaway that listed trusted, fence companies that you've worked with and trusted plumbing companies that you've worked with and electrical companies. And, just because we can all go to Google and look for things, but we also know that not all of those Google reviews are necessarily impartial. There, it's better if you have folks who have purchased a home. And we were in kind of a unique situation because, we have many friends who have purchased homes, but we also had a ton of our friends group who haven't purchased homes, who haven't had to work with contractors. And, it was just interesting. We, just a little story, I guess, for us, we knew that we were going to fence in our backyard, right? Like that was top of our priority list on things we wanted to do in the house. And I know this is no secret to people who have had to go down this road, but it is kind of eye-opening how many people don't return phone calls, emails, or requests for quotes. And so that was like, we learned that as homeowners, that just because you send a request to somebody who may have great reviews online doesn't mean they're ever even going to acknowledge your phone call or your email or your text message. And so it would have been nice just to have some well vetted companies that we could have reached out to.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. That is something
Yeah.
that's been in the back of my mind and something that we need to just jump the gun and get it together because we do know those people. And I think that would be a very great tool for us to have for our clients, both past, current, future, when we get to closing. Hey, here's some recommendations. So I appreciate you guys sharing that. And thank you for the feedback. So what, the house that you bought, now talking about the home that you're in right now, what was your first impression of that house?
Well, we fell in love with it right away. And I think it's kind of in line with like if we were ever to give advice to anyone looking for a home, is like once you walk in, like you'll know it's home. So like for us, we knew it was home. And I think at that time we still had one home that we were going to look at or one other house that we were going to look at. And we are like, well, maybe we should look just in case. But then like this one lingered and you just know it's home. And so for us, we knew it was home when we walked in.
Yeah, like immediately. I know they say that and it sounds very cliche. Oh, you'll know. But we knew. I mean, the minute we came in, we knew. Actually, I think we started to know when we pulled up the street and we saw the exterior, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of all the homes we had seen, it was the most well kept. It was, all the stuff was there, right? Like new windows, new roof. It was the kind of stuff we knew that we didn't want new construction. That's not us. We don't want to be in a new neighborhood. We don't want to be in the suburbs. Nothing against people that want to be there, but that wasn't us. We wanted big, mature trees and people who were established as neighbors, And so when we saw this neighborhood, when we pulled up to this house, like it was already checking a bunch of boxes before we ever got out of the car.
Yay! Oh, I love to hear that. You answered kind of part of my next questions. So I might have you add to that. What are some things that you want to share with the folks listening that are maybe in the process of thinking about buying and starting on that journey from your experience or that you've learned while you've lived in your house?
Sure.
Go ahead.
One of the things we talked about, so we love our banks, we love our credit unions, the people who finance us. Do not pay attention to what they tell you can afford when they're on the phone with you. So, for example, it was an astronomical amount that they said in our minds. It was astronomical. What they told us we could be approved for. We knew that wasn't realistic based on our budget, based on our lifestyle. And so really just not constantly going a little higher, because before you know it, it's very realistic that you can be house poor by going a little bit higher. And so that's just one thing I think that we really looked at. And then do you want to talk about like
just to add to that, is just being practical about your purchase and being realistic. So buying within your means is kind of what I think AJ's getting at. And
right.
And I agree. It's finding your happy medium of where you're going to be excited to do. If you're excited to do home projects, look for a house that gives you that. If you're looking to move into a move-in ready home, do that too. But just be cognizant of your budget and how much effort, time, money goes into that post buying the house. And so I would just say weigh all the factors that would really impact that buying journey.
Yeah. And the other thing, that kind of curtails off of that when you're looking for a home, when you're looking to buy, is I think really, and we surprised ourselves. So we thought that when we were looking at homes, we were maybe going to be like, not necessarily looking at mechanicals and windows and, electrical, etc., because it's pretty easy to be like, this is a beautiful new kitchen with new finishes or whatnot. And then you kind of start digging a little deeper. And so I would just encourage people when they're looking at homes to look beyond just the paint, the carpet, the finishes, and look at those huge ticket items, windows, roof, major mechanical, furnace, air conditioner, hot water heater, electrical, all that kind of stuff. Because, a beautifully refinished floor doesn't really mean anything if the furnace is 35 years old and you've got to shell out how many grand before you move it. So, just really kind of looking at those things as well, I think are super important when you're looking for homes.
Look beyond the smoke and mirrors.
Yes.
Love it. I love it. That brings up good points, as you mentioned with kind of the amount that you can go up to. Yeah, that is, you can get generally approved for maybe more than you want to spend. So it's about finding that dream home within your budget. That's why one of the things that we'll always ask is, okay, what payment are you comfortable with? Not what price are you comfortable with, what payment? Because we can back that up and figure that out. And you still may be surprised that you could afford more than you thought you could, but you're also not searching for something that's well above your means, right? And I love, AJ, that you brought up the mechanicals, because that is definitely, that's the first thing I go to. Okay, what are the windows look like? What about the roof, the siding? All of that stuff that you just have to do doesn't necessarily add value to the house. It just needs to be done. You could refinish those floors yourself, and it would be worth a lot more than the house that has the 35-year-old furnace, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. We've given some really good advice. Final question, what is the best piece of advice that you could give to somebody who is looking to buy a home or sell a home?
Invest in a realtor. I mean, yes, you can do it on your own, but honestly, I would invest in a realtor any day to help us along with the process, because it just made it that much easier for us to really look at the things that we wanted to look at in a home.
Yeah, and just along those lines, same thing. You kind of need a coach, right? Like you talked about your real estate tour guide, because we didn't really get to this in other questions, but I mean, Ryan, when we sat and met with you, like you had contacts for like financial institutions and banks and credit unions, and oh, this is a VA loan, this is a HUD house, not HUD, I think it's FHA loan, this is a conventional mortgage. What we didn't know, neither one of us, until we met with you. I mean, there are zero money down financing options available for people to buy homes. Like we had no idea that existed. I thought that was the thing of the past. And so really just researching and leaning on a realtor who's gonna be able to help you and answer those questions. I mean, it was absolutely worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, education is important, like educating yourself, but also leaning on the subject matter experts to learn a little bit more about the process.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Absolutely. That is all for today's episode of the dsmSOLD Team Podcast. Your real estate experience matters. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Paul and AJ, for taking the time to join us, and for sharing your experience, what went well, what you wish you could change, what you wish you had known, and sharing your advice, because we do this day in and day out, and so it's really nice to hear from you as somebody that doesn't work in real estate every single day, to know what is the advice that you have. All definitely great information, and definitely a great reason to check out this podcast and listen to Paul and AJ's awesome experience and knowledge that they've gained in owning their home. So thanks again for joining us, and join us on our next episode of the dsmSOLD Team Podcast. Your real estate experience matters, coming soon. And don't forget to follow us on social media and watch on YouTube. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate you.
Thanks
Awesome.
for allowing
Thanks,
us
Ryan.
to share our experience.
You bet.
Bye.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Well, have an amazing evening, and we'll talk to you soon.
You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.